These 5 tests really became the reason why some entrepreneurs achieve all of their goals and why other entrepreneurs become victims, stuck, they can't progress, and eventually they fail. That's why we have so many busy CEOs, busy entrepreneurs. They are so tired on Friday, but they don't feel like they've achieved anything. They said yes to all the busy work, but the thing that was intimidating them, they procrastinated on. But if they just do that thing, that's what's going to unlock the next level for themselves and the next level movement. The reality is a person who's constantly failing at this test and facing it, their whole mindset is run on emotion. You need to really understand that a lot of success is boring repetition.
Remember, adversity is your advantage.
Hey friends, cannot wait for you to check out this new episode of the CEO Show podcast where I interview my friend and high-performance mindset expert, Ben Elliott. Ben is a world-class mindset coach with over 15 years experience working with business owners, leaders, and athletes across 12 different countries worldwide. So if you want to learn about how to make more income, more impact, and more legacy, check out this episode where Ben and I break down the 5 most common mindset tests and how to navigate through them. Ben Elliott, my friend, welcome to the show.
Hey Bryce, thanks for having me on, man.
So, dude, man, super inspired as we got connected through my executive director of sales, Max, who was part of your training. He enters Jeremy Miner's 7th level training, and you were one of the mindset guests and coaches. And he turns to me, he's like, Bryce, this guy, Ben Elliott, literally incredible training. You got to get connected with them. So we did. And then you delivered a fire training to our Fit Body Bootcamp Mastermind owners. And since it was so valuable, I want to get you on and really just dissect some of the mindset philosophy and the frameworks that you had. So I want to thank you for being on, and let's get down to it. You have a 5-point mindset framework around the tests that we all go through as entrepreneurs and leaders. So I just want to give you the opportunity to give an overview of the 5-point mindset framework that you use, and then we'll break each of the steps down. So we'd love to hear it.
Yeah, great. Well, being a coach for like 17 years in mindset and high performance, I found that every entrepreneur goes through these 5 tests. And for me, I'm a real nerd. So I want to find out, why are people succeeding? Why are people failing? And what I find is that every entrepreneur, every CEO, every high-level performer goes through these 5 tests. Whether they label it or not, they're all facing these tests. So when I kind of started to unpack client results and looking at everything, these 5 tests really became the reason why some entrepreneurs achieve all of their goals and why other entrepreneurs become victims, stressed, burnt out, stuck, they can't progress, and eventually they fail because they just don't know what to do and overcome it. So there could be a million things, but I've always found that it's these 5 tests that they all face. And if they can pass them, they level up. And if they fail, they get stuck, they stay in the same position, which is going to breed failure. So in a general overview, the 5 tests are, number 1 is the shiny object test. And people are going to hear that and go, yep, they can relate to that straight away. There's the intimidation test. There's the time test, the circumstance test, and the true cost test. So they're the 5 tests that everyone's facing. So shiny object is, people who are always coming up with a brand new idea. That entrepreneur friend that you have, CEO friend, they stop in the middle of a conversation. They're writing down the next business idea. You see them 1 week, then the next week they're thinking, hey, I was doing that last week, but now this week we're going to launch this business instead. So that's always jumping around, always changing tactics. We know that guy. We love them, but we can tell that they're never going to achieve anything because they're darting everywhere. Intimidation test is where you know what you got to do, but it's scaring you and it's freaking you out. And the only way to move forward is to face that head on. We got the time test. This one sucks. The time test is you're trying to achieve your goal and it's just taking a really long time. And everyone else around you is progressing faster. And it's grinding you because you're trying so hard. You're doing everything. You're facing your fears, but things just aren't happening. That's the time test. Circumstance test is, nothing, no fault of your own, but challenges have come against you. It's not your fault, but you have to fix it. And that is a real deterrent towards progress and everything else. And lastly, it's the true cost test, where you feel like you're paying the price, and then you realize, wow, the price of success, the price of accomplishment is going to cost me way more than I realized. So there's a quick overview of the 5 tests. And I'm sure everyone listening is probably relating to 1 or 2 of these straight away.
Oh my goodness. The first time I heard this framework, I'm like, Ben, you are talking to me through this Zoom with, nearly 50 other people on. So certainly if you're listening to this or watching this and you're a leader, you're an entrepreneur, you're looking to make a bigger impact, you definitely can relate and resonate to a few of these tests. So before we dive into the shiny object, Ben, I should actually provide the platform. How did you learn these? And I would imagine when I'm thinking, okay, you're the mindset expert, you're probably flawless at all of these. You've never had any mindset issues. You've literally just grew up just being this badass from day one. Maybe that's the case, maybe not. How did you learn this framework? And give us a little bit of backstory before we dive into the shiny object.
Yeah, so that was definitely not me. I was a typical high performer in the sense that I've always had big dreams and big goals. So I've always wanted more. Like at 10 years old, my dad said to me, Ben, you're either going to go professional in basketball or you're going to have to get really good at school because you can't do the factory job that I'm doing. So I immediately at 10 years old go, okay, great, I'm going pro in my sport. So ever since then, I was hungry, I was driven, and I had big goals. But unfortunately, I was probably one of the most flawed individuals ever. I was the shy kid growing up. I was a procrastinator. I was not. I found it hard to be motivated. I was full of stress. I used to overthink everything. So when it came to mindset, my mindset blocks sabotaged my professional basketball career. You know, it wasn't my height, it wasn't my skill, it was my mindset. I couldn't show up on the big stages and have the confidence and the mindset and the mentality that allowed the skills to shine. You know, I could try hard, but everyone's trying hard, especially in sport. Everyone's trying hard. In business and
Mhm.
leadership, everyone's trying hard. Trying hard is not enough of an edge. So the mindset sabotaged my basketball career, and then it sabotaged my first business as well. So I realized that if I was going to really unlock my life and get to those big dreams and goals, I had to work on me first. So I was my first client. And I've been working on myself for over 20 years, and I've been coaching individuals with mindset for 17 years now. But for me, again, typical high performer mindset, we want the best. We want the best results. So someone will come in working with me, and I'm like, yeah, they got good results, but it's not the level that I knew would be possible. So I'm a real nerd, data nerd, and I like to look at all my clients' notes and everything else. And after 17 years of working with clients, I noticed, man, this person is struggling because they're going through this thing here. They're facing intimidation or their mind's doing this. And after looking at notes after 17 years, I started to notice that there's patterns here. There's one guy who's a massive CEO of a massive company, but then there's another person who's an entrepreneur of a small team. And they're both going through the similar situation, you know, and that would be the true cost test, for example. So I started just to model it and map it out. And then obviously I had faced every one of these tests myself multiple times. So after noticing all the patterns, it just became obvious to then create the framework. And then looking at my life, looking at clients' life, how do we overcome this? Looking at inspirational stories of people who have accomplished big things. And then the patterns just became really clear to me. So that's where the framework came from. And I've faced every one of these tests. And I think I've faced them more than all of my clients. And that's probably why I'm so good at explaining it and so good at helping them, because I've been in the nitty gritty. I've been in every one of them. I've been tempted to quit. I've been close to failure multiple times, all that kind of stuff. But it's also a testament to how powerful your headspace is. If you can control it, if you can dominate your mindset, you can go from a shy kid who fails multiple dreams into becoming, you know, a coach who's or someone who's just doing clients in 12 countries or whatever else. You really can renew your headspace and it does level you up. So it all came from personal experience and just needing to find an answer for me and for my clients.
Good on you, man. Well, I appreciate that transparency and vulnerability. To your point, I've went through all these tests as well, but I wanted to
Mm.
ask the question, one, just to acquaint myself and our audience more with you, but then two, just to showcase, hey, if you're going through this, you're not alone. A guy like you, Ben, who
Mm.
is literally a mindset, a high performance expert and coach. If you've gone through these, that means that our audience members will go through these, have gone through these, but then there's hope on the other side. So I
Yeah.
appreciate that insight.
I'll say one more thing as well. Like I'm still going through these tests because what will happen is every time you achieve a goal, the nature of a high performer is to go, great, what's the next goal? We're enjoying it, we're happy, but we want to build the next thing. We want to get to the next level of happiness, fulfillment, success. We care more about impact, whatever it may be. So every time you set a big goal, you're going to have to face the same tests again because the goal exposes your weaknesses, your shortcomings, and you face new challenges. So that's why you can't just think, okay, I have to pass these tests one time and then I'm good forever. It's like the only time you stop facing tests is when you stop making new goals. So if you don't want to face the tests, stay small or stay where you are, be content, and that's fine. But as soon as you reach a bigger goal, there's going to be one of these tests again. The good thing is that once you've passed them a few times, you know how to dominate them a lot faster.
Yeah, and it's about pattern recognition to your point. So yeah, touche. And if you're listening to this or watching this, you are a high performer. You're going to face these tests. You're going to launch and continue to create big goals. So that's the value of you breaking these down for us, Ben. So let's dive into shiny object test. So I'm curious from your perspective, when would you know that you're actually experiencing going through this test? And then really when I think of shiny object, I think of like the driver's emotion, right? We get so excited as entrepreneurs, but unfortunately or fortunately, emotions can be a catalyst or assistant to you, but they can also just whip you around. And from my lens, when I was like digesting this particular content and hearing this for the first time, I think this is an emotional, I guess, response at the core. So how do you know you're going through this test? And then how do you regulate your emotions so you can stay on the path and overcome it?
Yeah, so with the shiny object test, and again, I want to say the truth because if it stings a bit hearing it, we need to hear it because we need to change and we need to grow. But when it comes to the shiny object test, the reality is person who's constantly failing at this test and facing it, their whole mindset is run on emotions. So your whole bus of your life should be driven by your goals, by your values, and by your direction, right? And your vision. It shouldn't be run by emotions. Emotions are good. They're just terrible leaders. Terrible leaders. Emotions aren't good for leading us at all. They're terrible. They're really good support workers, and they're meant to follow the leader of goal, vision, value, all that kind of stuff. So that's just the reality of it. So you'll notice that you're in the test. It's really easy to notice your coworker or your friend who's a shiny object because you're dissociated and you can see them. But to notice it in yourself, you'll find that when everyone sets a goal, the first thing that happens is they get really excited. I'm going to get this healthy. I'm going to get this lean for summer. And they get excited. The emotions are there. I'm going to start this new business and it's going to be great. And every business works on paper. The numbers are fantastic on paper. So the emotions are there. And what the emotion is doing is it gives you a lot of self-belief, but it's just an emotional temporary belief. And you'll notice that you're a shiny object person is as soon as things get hard, your emotions of excitement begin to drop. And if you notice then you're looking for a brand new direction, a brand new goal, a brand new idea, to get somewhere, that's when you notice it. So at the first point of challenge, like this is hard, this isn't fun anymore, eating at a calorie deficit isn't this, my body is sore, or you know what I mean, I'm having to do skills that are really tough. At the first sign of challenge, if your brain starts to imagine up and think up other business ideas, you're in a shiny object zone. If you're looking to change the strategy at first point of difficulty, you know that your brain is in that shiny object mode and you're running on emotions. What's actually happening in your headspace is your brain is wanting to get that high again, that belief again, that good feeling again. So your brain goes, what else can I do that would give me that feeling where I felt so good? Nothing was happening, but I felt good. Nothing was achieved or making progress, but I felt excited. So they're almost like an addict looking for that emotional dopamine hit of something brand new. So if you notice that that's your pattern, I'm excited, there's a challenge, and then I look for something else, that's you. So what you need to do is you need to really understand that a lot of success is boring repetition with anything. Basketball, I was a great player when I was, like the skill was there, as I said, just not the mindset. But for me, it was normal to shoot hundreds and hundreds of shots every single day. And it was boring. But the fun comes not because you're full of exciting emotions. The fun is just enjoyment of process. And that's what you really need to work on if you're shiny object. You need to learn to go, okay, what's my process? What do I need to do? And you need to learn to find enjoyment in the process. And that's going to be the big key there. Embrace the boredom, outball your competition, and just learn to enjoy that different pace.
Oh, amen to that. I mean, you are speaking to my soul. I've been guilty of as charged many times on this. And if you're listening or watching this, you're an entrepreneur, you're a leader, you probably are with me here as well. One last question around this test. I'm going to play the devil's advocate because I would say more times than not, people hit the shiny object and it's literally just based off emotion. Everything you just laid is true. There are some times though, legitimately, you've exhausted the path and you really actually need to shift course. I would say more times than not, people default to shiny object and they move too quick. But there are some times where you actually need to change course. How do you know that?
Yeah.
What's the difference? And I guess, yeah, break that down for me.
Yeah. So when I look at people because I used to be massive shiny object. That was me all over. Like my wife used to call me a fad person when we were first married 13 years ago. I was like, oh, I'm going to do this diet. And she would just laugh. She's like, Ben, it's always something new. I'm going to do this idea. I'm going to change the business this way. And she would call me the fad person. So I had the same concern. I'm like, well, now do I just hold the line for infinity, even if it's not going to work? But the reality is when someone successful does strategic planning, emotions are kind of in the background. A lot of it is logic. It's a plan. Is the data saying it's working? Is the data not saying it's working? If we pivot, and you'll find that a shiny object person doesn't really have a good plan. They have the inklings of a plan and then they go for it because they're excited. Whereas good planning is really well thought out, data driven, it's detailed. They're looking at the evidence, they're looking at the whole thing. And so if you're thinking, do I need to strategically pivot or am I just shiny object? You need to really sit down, look at your data. What are the finances saying? What's the fruit of what we're doing? What's working? What's not working? And you find that process engages your logical brain and less of your emotional brain. And that's what you need to be doing there. That's why people get mentors as well. They listen to podcasts like this to learn from other exciting, awesome people as well. And again, it's about where can I get the data to go, what's working, what's not, and who are people who are ahead of me? What are they doing? You know what I mean? So you'll find that the shiny object process is very little planning, enough to get excited about it, but proper planning is really detailed, really thought out, and really strategic. Less emotional, more logical.
Yeah, that's an incredible roadmap, because if you are well thought out, very data driven, things become clearer. But unfortunately, the most people that suffer from this, the shiny object test, they're not data driven. They're not detailed in the planning. They're just letting their emotions whip them around. So incredible trigger point.
Exactly.
All right, let's talk about the next test. It was the intimidation test. And I think this is rooted, at least from your work, what I've seen, but also to my own anecdotal experience, through fear. And one of the things when you laid down this intimidation test, it spoke to me because even this past weekend, my business partner, founder of Fit Body Bootcamp, Bedros Keuilian, put on this big event called BK Live, which is now an ongoing annual event. And I've spoken publicly on big stages dozens and dozens of times. And I knew my content, but I was still nervous. I was still scared that those butterflies, and you were with me, Ben, because I was like, oh, this is just the intimidation test. I already know the content. I've already done this. This is just the intimidation test rearing its ugly head. So I'm curious, that's my own experience, but from your perspective, how do you know when you're facing it? And then how can you overcome this particular test to get through it?
Well, the thing is as well around these tests is every time you pass a test, you level up. And that's the big thing, right? And with the intimidation test, the vision of it is because you have to face it. There's no way around it. But if you're facing the intimidation test, you really have to recognize that if I pass this test, the hard thing is going to become easy. That's the vision. That's the thing that gets you through it, right? Now, the intimidation test, how do you know you're going through it? It's when you know you should do something, but you don't want to do it. So if you need leads for your business and you keep having this thought in your mind that I need to do some outbound cold calling, or I need to reach out to this thing, and you know you should do it, but you start procrastinating and doing all the other work, you're in the intimidation test. The task is intimidating you. If you know that I really can't cancel this this talk this workshop that you're going to do, part of you might have been tempted to get out of it or avoid it, but you can't, right? And at that point, you know that this is an intimidation test. The thing I need to do is intimidating. It's uncomfortable. There's a lot of nerves involved, but I know I need to do it. That's when you know you're going through the intimidation test. The intimidation test is it's always the activity that you're scared to do is the activity that's going to grow you and it's going to change your life. So that's the thing you need to understand. It's always that way. And that's why we have so many busy CEOs, busy entrepreneurs. They are so tired on Friday, but they don't feel like they've achieved anything. They're exhausted on Friday, but they don't feel like they've achieved anything because they said yes to all the busy work, but the thing that was intimidating them, they procrastinated on. But if they just do that thing, that's what's going to unlock the next level for themselves and the next level moving forward. So that's how you know you're going through the intimidation test.
Yeah, I mean, spot on. And I just went through it this past weekend, my friend. So thanks for being in my corner because that the pattern recognition, it's interesting when you're aware, when you have an understanding of what you're going through, it actually made me it made it so much easier to push through that. So I want to acknowledge you for that.
Yeah. Yeah, and to be honest, like I had two big I've had a lot of them, but two major intimidation tests that changed my life. The first one was public speaking. So remember, I was the shy kid. I
Yeah,
had,
yeah.
I had friends in high school because I was great at basketball, but in terms of social skills, I was terrible. I was so bad that my dad, when he'd say, "Hey Ben," at 15 years old, "Hey Ben, order the pizza for the family," I would just avoid it. I just couldn't do it. Like, that was the level that I had to start with. I was that shy and
Oh, wow.
intimidated by those types of things. So it was a really bad combination to be so intimidated and so shy, yet have such huge goals. But that's where I started from, right? So when I was 19 years old, one of my mentors said, "Hey, if you want new clients as a personal trainer back in the day, just do a talk for one of your clients. Get all their work friends in for free and just do a talk in their lunch break." And I'm like, "Mate, you're talking to a kid who's shy and da da da, and I need to get clients and da 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 da. I'm stressed about money. I'm a stressor achiever. All these things going on through my head." And then again, it was in my head, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. You got to do that talk, Ben. That's the only way forward. So I eventually got 50 people in a room, which was a major miracle. One of my clients at the time brought in all of their work friends. Free talk. I was packing it. I hadn't done a talk ever in my life. Had no skill, no idea what I was doing. Slides last minute. I was disorganized. It was terrible. I literally burnt a hole in the carpet from this walking back and forth for hours. I couldn't eat because I was so stressed days out. It was terrible. And then I finally got up there facing my fears and did this talk in front of 50 corporate workers. And it was the worst talk anyone has ever done in the history of the planet. It was so bad. I was mumbling my words and people looked bored and it was absolutely terrible. People would have walked out if they weren't so polite. It was that bad. And afterwards, I was inconsolable. I knew it was bad. I knew it was terrible. I felt terrible. The fear was still there. The embarrassment was there. But something weird happened. I was booked up for a full year after that because everyone
Okay.
just thought, "Oh, he's the expert. He's a personal trainer. We'll just work with him." And then because I was exposed to those people, I got a full book of clients for a whole year. So I was so afraid, but the intimidation unlocked what I needed, the next level in business. And now, 17, 8, what is it, 20 years later since that talk, now like my job is extroverted work, and
Oh,
doing these
yeah.
podcasts, doing these talks, and it's easy for me now. So what was so hard and limiting has now built me a 20-year career in this people helping space. One intimidation test that I passed. The other one I'll mention as well, something if I'm babbling on too much, but the second intimidation test happened a lot later. And this one I think will be really relatable. There was a time about 7 years ago, I was in high demand, busy, saying yes to everybody. And it's weird because when you're a successful person at the start, when you're not successful, you're saying yes to everything and you need to. You got nothing going for you. You need to say yes to every opportunity and you should always do that. So I was thinking that's the way forward forever. So I was saying yes to everything. So I was fully booked coaching, doing talks, doing workshops, running group programs, doing other investments for myself on the side there. I was a part of two different organizations, different leaderships. I was being trained up to become the board of directors of a major charity here in Adelaide, South Australia. And I was just finding that, man, I'm just like not happy. I'm busy. I'm tired. I'm getting to Friday thinking like, what happened to my goals? And it didn't seem like an intimidation test at the time. It felt like something else. But then I was realizing, well, why am I not changing this? And I'm like, well, I'm really intimidated to tell these people who really think that I'm their solution for their board of directors, and I'm their solution for their organization over here, and they need me to do this, and clients need me to do that. And in the end, I realized the intimidation test was actually I wasn't comfortable saying no, so I was a yes man. I was a
Mm.
rescuer. So
People
then I was
please.
burning out, and I was like, Anna, wife, we've been together for a long time. How am I going? Like, give me some feedback on the outside. How am I going on my joy and all of this? She goes, Ben, to be honest, for the last few months, you've been positive and miserable at the same time. And I'm like, what? Positive and miserable. So mentally, I was positive, good attitude, everything, but I lost my joy. So for me, the next intimidation test was I had to have these really hard conversations. Get out of the charity. I believed in the charity. I loved the people. I loved the organization, but there was no joy there, no passion there. Couldn't do what I actually wanted to do, which is really to level up my coaching business and help more people there. So in the end, like that intimidation to have hard conversations, to let my yes be yes, my no be no, and to cut off certain work, certain people, and certain things to free me up, that was another really huge intimidation test. I knew that they would treat me differently after I had the conversation. Still had to have it every way anyway. So I did. They did treat me different, but that unlocked a level of enjoyment back in my life again almost immediately. Way more refreshed, way more productive. So again, it's like these intimidation tests are not just doing scary activities. Sometimes it's having the hard conversations that you don't want to have. So
Yeah, it's a good reframe. I wasn't thinking that line of thought, but as you uncover that, amen. Let's dive into the time test. So, what's the foundation of the time test? How do you know when you're facing it, and then how do you overcome it?
yeah, the next tests start to suck in like progressively worse, you know. So the time test is not fun. The time test, how do you know you're in the time test? Well, you have a goal, and it's one thing to think, okay, it's not realistic to achieve this goal in 2 weeks, so I shouldn't be upset by it. But the time test is where you've been at something for a really long time. You've been trying really, really like a really long time. You've been doing it for months or years, and you just can't crack that level of finance. You can't crack that level of breakthrough in the business or growth or whatever it may be. And you know, you're doing all the right actions. So you're not facing an intimidation test because you're passing it all the time. You're doing the hard thing. You're doing the hard thing, but things just aren't opening up for you. And you'll definitely know you're in this space if you look around at people to the left and right, other entrepreneurs, people who started a group business coaching program before you and they're getting better results, or people are finding better staff or hiring better people more than you are, and you can't find them in the same area. And it seems like everyone else is progressing faster and better than you. So that's the time test. It's taking you a really long time to get to where you want to be. The unfortunate part of the time test is the root issue of the time test is it's a skill issue. It's always a skill issue. And this one here, it sucked for me because when I was looking at my business and I was realizing, man, like I'm really busy and I'm really smart. I'm really good at what I'm doing and I'm really good at coaching, but there's something missing. And other people are starting their businesses in other areas and it's all just moving a lot faster. And it was the skill issue for me is I wasn't good at systemizing and creating models and systems and plans. And then, so there's always a skill issue that's holding you back from achieving that goal. And if someone who is 5 years ahead of you, someone who already has the results, like for example, Bryce, if you had to substitute into one of these other entrepreneurs' roles in their businesses, because you're further ahead than them, you would get the result they're trying to get a lot faster. Why? You've done it before. You know what to do. You have a mental process. You have a physical process. You know what to look for. You know how it all works. And you
You
could
have the
jump
skill
into their
too.
situation. Hey, what's that?
Sorry to interject. I have the skill as well. So, I mean, that's a
Yeah.
huge component of this to time collapse.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's why you could sub yourself into their roles and their business and you could transform it really, really quickly. So it's always a skill set challenge. So the time test, you get so hungry for the goal, you get obsessed about the goal, you're desperate for the goal. It's stressing you out that you don't have the goal, but you need to change your focus. The focus in the time test is not about, I want this goal badly. The focus needs to be my whole existence in terms of work is I need to get better at this particular skill, whatever it may be: marketing, leadership, hard conversations, hiring, firing, systemizing things, whatever it may be. But there's a skill set that if you can master, it will take your business and your life to another level.
And Ben, the first time I heard this from you, I had two emotions. On one hand, it stung because I was in
Yeah.
this like rut thinking of all the projects and workflow I have. The other side of the coin, it was liberating because I realized that's absolutely true. If I can just level up the skill set, then ultimately that can time collapse and you get a better result. So it stung, but it
Yeah.
challenged me and it was very liberating. And now, for the last X amount of time since we've had this conversation and I got downloaded, it's actually empowered me and liberated me just to realize, you know what, I just got to level my skill set. When I do that, I can pass the time test.
Exactly. And that's the right mindset to have. You think about it like when you're going through a time test and you're seeing everyone else progress in something, it's really frustrating. And then you get stuck in no man's land. What do I do about that? You feel like a victim. You don't know what's going on. But as soon as you go, oh, it's a skill set. Okay, great. What are the top 10 skills I need? What's the one that needs the most work? If I rate myself out of 10 with that skill, like where am I currently at? I'm a 3 out of 10 with that skill. Great. Who's that person who's ahead of me who I look up to as a mentor? Well, they're a 9 or a 10 out of 10 in that skill. Great. So I need to now work on going from a 3 to a 5, from a 5 to a 7. Everything becomes tangible, and all that negativity of jealousy, all that negativity of comparison, all that negativity of like frustration and hardship and victim mentality goes, because all my goal is just to get the reps in, get better at this skill. And then I know then the time test will be over. So yeah, it becomes really tactical, more empowering, and it does sting, but it's good medicine.
Great medicine. Circumstance test. We're, I guess now 4 or 5. What does this look like? How do you know when you're facing it? And then really, how can leaders adjust and shift their mindset and focus on what they can control? Because from my perspective, that's really what it comes down to, figuring out what you cannot control, what you can control, and focusing completely on what you can control. So that way, circumstances do not dictate the responsibility that you still have as a leader, even though you might be going through a really challenging circumstance test.
Circumstance test. This one sucks as well. So circumstance test, you're doing everything right and you've got a lot of momentum. Things are starting to happen, right? And it's weird, the timing of the circumstance test. It feels like things are starting to work. You're starting to relax. It's starting to get there. And if you know that if you just things continue, you're going to hit your goal. It's weird, but at that point, something happens. A key team member hands in their resignation. Probably not your fault, but you have to deal with it. Circumstances, right? It's everything's going well, but things outside of your control happen and it's not your fault, but it affects you, it affects your business, and you still need to face it. COVID was the biggest circumstance test in the recent history that we're all going to remember, right? People's businesses could have been flowing, could have been going well. Something happened that was not their fault, but guess what? Your business and your team and everything else still needs to survive. You have to figure it out. So it's not your fault, but you have to handle it. And that's the circumstance test. So with the circumstance test, it sucks because I'm going to say something here that people might not have heard before, but it's true in my experience and just from what I know about neuroscience. But the problem is with the circumstance test, something happens outside of your control. It affects your money, your happiness, your work, your relationships, whatever it may be. So what happens is your brain starts to fixate on the problem and the thing that you can't control, and you start to worry about it. So I'm going to say this, right? What is worry? Worry is a really poor coping mechanism. Your brain is worrying because you're trying to find a sense of internal certainty that I can figure it out or it's going to work out well. And worry is a really poor version of trying to get that certainty. So you start focusing on, well, how can I fix this? And this person said this and they did this and da 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 da. And your mind just keeps looping, trying to analyze it, overthinking it, trying to get to a feeling of, well, I understand it now, or they did it for this reason, or I could do this, that, and the other. The problem is the worry will never give you that feeling of certainty. So the worry doesn't stop. So when you're going through the circumstance test, you need to grab a hold of your head and go, you know what? I need to focus on what I can control, because that's what's going to give you any form of certainty. When my clients, when I went through COVID, we had our sessions and I'm like, hey, COVID's happening. The temptation for you is going to be stressing out and not do these coaching sessions, but you need to work on your mindset unlike ever before. We don't know how long this is going to happen. We have no certainty. What we do know is that we need your headspace and the best space for you to show up and handle what you need to handle, right? So focusing on what we can control. One of the first things that we did with everybody is you need to take your routines to another level. Morning routines, night routines, business systems. You need to take your routines of when you work on your needle moving work. Everything needs to be so systemized because you need some form of predictability to give you a feeling of certainty versus everything that you can't control is constantly changing. But if you know that in the morning, I wake up at this time, I do this first, I do that second, I then hit the gym, then I then work on the key thing of the business, I then do one hard activity. If I have that as a routine every single morning, I know then with some predictability what my day is going to look like. Gives you a sense of control. I can't control what they're saying, can't control what they're doing, but I can control my reaction. So then we get them to focus on, well, how does the best version of me show up today? Even though the staff is leaving and all this stuff is happening and there's uncertainty, okay, how does the best version of myself show up? So we want to really grab a hold of the mind and get it focusing on what they can control. And what's going to happen is it's going to build their capacity. So if you find, and you've interviewed some of these successful leaders before, you'll find the best leaders, they've gone through a lot of circumstance tests. Because the circumstance test, it builds your metaphorical shoulders to carry a bigger weight and a bigger vision. There are some people where if we gave them the vision of running a massive company as the CEO, the pressure would break them. But the people who've passed enough circumstance tests and the other tests and they've skilled up, you can find that they don't get pushed around by these kind of circumstances nearly as much as someone who's early in their journey.
So good, so gold. Holy smokes, man. Speaking to my soul. And COVID was just a beautiful example here in the States. We actually had it less challenging from at least what I can see compared to Australia. But here in the States, every state had their own jurisdiction. So states like California and New York were very similar to like the really hard restrictions of, Australia. And when you're running a brick and mortar franchise where you're running in-person sessions and that's taken away from you, that's a hard circumstance to navigate, which we just had to do. But to your point, why I love this conversation, Ben, I love your work because this podcast is about leadership. It's about self-leadership and leadership others. And you need to be able to, focus on what you can control, lead yourself before you can ever lead a team, before you can ever lead a business or a community. So hugely valuable. And I appreciate you shedding light on the circumstance test.
Absolutely.
Let's finish it off with the true cost test, which also spoke to my soul the first time I learned that, which is really about accepting the real price of success. So can you break this down? How do you know you're going through it? And then how do you get through this test?
Yeah, true cost. This one I think, has the most potential to destroy us basically and to knock us back. So what will happen is when you set a goal, especially as high performers, we know about sacrifice. We know about hard work. It's kind of like built into our DNA. We're willing to go hard and we're willing to do that. But what will happen is when you set the goal, someone who's not a shiny object, they'll set a goal and they'll be thinking in their mind, okay, what is it going to take in terms of finances, time, effort, energy, growth in order to achieve this, So if someone gives me a really good business idea and opportunity, my mind is like, what's the upside? What's the opportunity? But what's it going to take away from me? Is the finance going to be worth it? Is the time effort going to be worth it? All that kind of stuff, right? So we think that we have a pretty good idea of what something's going to take in terms of cost, financially, emotionally, mentally, growth, and time. But then what will happen with the true cost test is you get to this point where challenges happen and it's almost like the wind gets knocked out of your sails because you thought you were prepared to pay the price. You thought you were prepared to do the work. You thought you were prepared to go through the challenges and how long it was going to take. But you get to this point when you realize, oh crap, this is a lot harder and a lot bigger and a lot more complex than I originally realized. In that moment, that's when you're in the true cost test. The price that you thought you were going to pay is now not the price. And you just had a realization that it's a lot more complex, a lot harder, a lot bigger to get there. And it might take twice as long, 3 times as long, 5 times as long. You might start doing it and it's exciting. And then you're like, man, this is really difficult to commit to it over the long term. So at that point, it's the true cost test. If you don't pass the true cost test, you're going to get into a rut. You're going to get miserable. You're going to feel like you wasted time, effort, resources, everything else. And you're going to get into a real rut. And you're probably going to get tempted to play the victim. When you're in that victim mode, you ain't going to fight the challenges. You ain't going to move forward. So the true cost challenge, you have to literally go, okay, what is the actual cost? It's going to take this long. I've just, as an entrepreneur in my own business, perhaps as an example, I've just given this much of money. I've sold my house to go into this dream. And I'm just realizing now I need even more money to make this work. It's a true cost. Am I prepared to do that? So the only way to face the true cost test is you need to really look at it going, okay, what's the true cost? And you have to accept that new price because your brain had accepted the last price. That's it. It hadn't accepted the new price. And, not that the true cost test is the 5 stages of grief, but the 5 stages of grieving is really interesting because people only start to get any level of happiness back or fulfillment or progress when they get to acceptance, step 5. So with the true cost test, the wind's been knocked out of your sails. You just have to get to what is the cost, and I have to accept it. And if I'm not willing to accept it, then I have to quit where I am. That's just the only option. So,
yeah, humbling for sure. And again, Ben, you're speaking to my soul. And friends, if you're watching this or listening to this on audio, I know that you can certainly relate to these tests because we are humans. These are the things that we all go through. And I'll never forget, joining Fit Body Bootcamp. And I started as a franchise partner back in 2012, scaled to 5 locations in 2018. And then Bedros Cooley, and my business partner, the founder of Fit Body, invited me and recruited me to be his vice president and then eventually CEO. And it was probably about 6 months in when it dawned on me, well, number one, I'm not in the fitness industry anymore. I'm in the franchising industry, which is even though it looks to be the same, very, very different. And then the humbling realization of the complexity of this business on the franchising side. The good news is we make it easy for our fitness, franchise partners, but the humbling realization that the true cost was way higher than I thought going in. And to your point, it was challenging from an emotional perspective, but I pushed through, and I just had to lower the ego and just accept that this is actually the true cost. And this is what it's going to take to succeed. And thankfully I just dusted off and kept on pushing through. I would have loved to know this framework. It would have probably been a little bit easier in the process. So I appreciate you. And again, I love your work, but you're speaking my soul. And I know if you're listening to this, you've certainly experienced this as well. And I'm hopeful that now you have a framework, a guide to bring some awareness so that when you spot whether it's the true cost test or any of the other 4 tests that we talked about, you have the awareness in that and also the tools to push through.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, my friend, we'll finish us out today. The title of my show or the episode is called the CEO Show, which stands for the Chief Executive Officer. So from your perspective, Ben, what does it mean to be a CEO?
Well, obviously, when you're a hammer, everything's a nail. So I'm a mindset and performance guy. So, my answer is going to relate a lot into that side of things. But for me, a CEO means that you are responsible. That's what a CEO means. It's you are responsible. So whether it's your fault or not, you're responsible to handle it. You're responsible to fix it. Big companies, the board of directors, which I used to be on one for a massive organization, a massive charity. But with the CEO, you don't really care about the excuses. You care about results. So they're responsible. If there's things happening in the leadership and in the staffing, everyone's looking to the CEO to make that solution. So I always say the CEO, they are the person who's responsible. And it's a lot of pressure and it's a lot of weight to have to handle that and stuff. But I see the CEO, and to have a CEO mindset is a real key for being a CEO. So if you're a CEO, that extreme ownership is just going to be your life moving forward. And you being able to not play the victim is going to be one of your big superpowers for your survival. And also I see being a CEO, there's incredible upside. You get to impact a lot of people. You get to do some really fun work. You get paid more than the average employee. So there's a lot of upside. But I think, in order for a CEO to be a real CEO, they're the one taking extreme ownership. They're the one leading from the front. They're the ones who are able to challenge, coach, and confront when they need to. But they're also, going first because they're responsible for everything that's happening below them. So that's my definition of a CEO.
Yeah, well said. Leaders lead from the front, extreme ownership, and it's about taking responsibility, my friend. Well, incredible episode. I know our audience got a ton of value today. I'm curious, Ben, where would be the best way if someone's listening to this, watching this, who's inspired, want to follow along? I know you have an awesome podcast called Get Unlocked. So I'm curious if that's the place or if there's another platform they can connect with you on.
Yeah, so Get Unlocked Podcast is on all the podcast streaming services. The easiest website to find me on is getunlockedcoaching.com. Getunlockedcoaching.com, because then they have all access to everything. They got the podcast on there. They got some notes on everything else. And if anyone listens to this and they like the information, they can just reach out to me via the website or any way they want to. And then I'll give them any types of information if they need more tools or a cheat sheet for this episode or anything like that. So.
Yeah, amen to that. Well, Ben, before we wrap today, I just want to acknowledge you. It's been awesome just getting to know you over the last few engagements we've had. And I will never forget this. Aside from Max, my executive director of sales, just screaming at me and being like, dude, Bryce, we got to bring Ben into our organization, figuring out he can help with our franchise partners' mindset and all that, which you clearly have done in spades. But I will never forget this when we set up the initial discovery call, the time of the training, because you're based in Adelaide, Australia, which is a day ahead of us here in Los Angeles. Our calls are at 10 a.m. Pacific time, Los Angeles time, which translated to 1:30 or 2 in the morning in Australia, some crazy time. And without even flinching, this just goes to show you practice what you preach. Your mindset is unlocked. And without a doubt, you just jumped in, crushed that training at 2 in the morning. And for that and many other reasons, I want to acknowledge you. I thank you for being on the show. And I know we're going to do other great work together.
Yeah, appreciate that. And I appreciate you, Bryce. Since I met you, met your brother, met Max and stuff, straight away, I'm like, these are good people. They're helping a lot of people. They're doing a lot of really good, impactful work. So for me, I was like, yeah, let's do it. Even if it's 2 a.m. in the morning, I'd recently given up coffee. and still showed up because I just believed in you guys first and what you're doing. So it was great to be a part of it and to work with you guys. So yeah.
Well, feelings mutual, my friend. Well, friends, I know you got a ton of value from this episode. My ask is like, subscribe, and drop your biggest takeaway. What test are you currently going through? I would love to hear that in the comments here, so that way we can create a healthy dialogue. And remember, adversity is your advantage, and we'll see you in the next episode.